All right, folks, we're talking about the brand new Netflix series Untamed. I was super pumped after seeing this trailer. I love a good Netflix mystery series. Sam Neill, Eric Bana, let's discuss.
I'm looking at this girl who went off El Capitan.
Another tourist. Got too close to the edge?
Yeah, I'm not sure yet.
So we follow Kyle Turner, who's called to Yosemite to investigate the gruesome murder of a park ranger found dead in the wilderness. The killing is almost savage and ritualistic. Evidence is pointing to an animal attack, but we're trying to figure out, was it animals, humans, something more? And we are in this vast landscape throughout this entire series. And, you know, it is fairly obvious that they didn't film this entire series on location. And I'm not saying it's entirely in front of a green screen. I'm just saying we get a lot of B-roll in the beginning, and then we're in very kind of generic areas. Forests, trees, claustrophobic locations. One in particular, I think it's episode 3, where one of our characters in Ranger Vasquez is stuck in this tunnel, and that's like my worst nightmare. When you see those stories of people who go cave diving and they're crawling through these claustrophobic I'm getting chills talking about it. We get one of those sequences, and really what we're dealing with here, obviously the main mystery at hand, and plenty of other plot points to talk about. A few too many, to be honest with you. But also how nature is impacting this search for more answers. How the environment is such a factor, and how they're going about getting these answers, but also how it could have easily played into the deaths that we see along the way. And I love a good murder mystery. What we see at the beginning is kind of shocking, right? You're looking at the detail of how this person was murdered or killed, or however it happened, the cuts, the incisions, and it feels like there's something more nefarious at play. And I do give this show kudos for keeping my suspicions open, more suspicious.
Today, Junior?
To put it plainly, I was engaged and intrigued throughout the first few episodes, 3, 4 of this show. Now, by the time we get to the end, I believe this show really does suffer from setting the stage for a lot of elements and setting them up slowly, taking its time, at times a little too long in the tooth for some of these side plots, a couple of them completely unnecessary. But those final 2 episodes, we are rushing to get to the end, and that's when things become a bit more obvious. Now, up until that point, I was on edge, on my toes, trying to figure out who did this, and our classic pairing, the duo that we're spending the most time with, Eric Bana, who is one of my favorite actors when I get to see him in an environment like this. And yeah, it's fewer and farther in between, but I think of a film like The Dry and some of these smaller independent movies he's been in over the years, and he's consistently giving these intriguing performances. Now, he's playing somewhat of a conventional character, someone we've seen 1,000 times, but he's paired up with the newbie, the new Ranger on the case, of course, and Ranger Vasquez, the typical new girl guy sidekick who believes that they are built for this situation no matter what life throws at them. And in her personal life, which we get to explore a little bit, dealing with her son, it's throwing a lot at her, but when she gets quickly engrossed in this mystery with her newfound partner, she starts to realize that maybe there is a lot more at play here, and I thoroughly enjoyed their dynamic. Now, I like the idea of getting to learn more about her, and there's a little subplot, a side story that on paper makes sense, and we're trying to build her up emotionally, more so our connection with her, but I don't know if this story needed to explore that. I could have used this more so in passing, like a conversation about it, rather than actually going off the trail. That's a pun. And exploring it, but this show decides to squeeze that into the 6 episodes. And instead of spending its time on the final 2 episodes worth of content, which could have really fleshed out this mystery more so, it spends its time on several subplots that I just don't know if they were necessary. It could have made the show so much better if it was more focused, had way less baggage. And that's not to say she doesn't need that type of exploration because she's not worth it as a character. That's not necessarily it. It's just some of these side stories were more distracting than anything. And I'm always thinking, can we get back to what we set up in that first episode where the dead body gets flung off the cliff? Like, that was cool. That's what we're focused on trying to solve, but this show is consistently cutting away from that. And at times it's not bad. It's more so, and I go back to this word, distracting. That said, maybe we could have used more time with Sam Neill's character, who kind of reminds me of Tommy Lee Jones the first time we see him in No Country for Old Men. This withered character that you know there's so much more there, but ultimately the show isn't able to explore him. And the tone is bleak. There is a bleakness to this entire situation. Solving a mystery like this in such a vast, not wasteland, but a vast place like Yosemite, where there's thousands and thousands of miles of just how in the world would anyone be able to solve anything in a place this big? And he tells his partner that in the beginning. He's like, yeah, good luck with what you're trying to do, block off this and this and try. No, there's no way you can do it in a place this massive. And the way that our Rangers communicate in the beginning did a nice job of setting us up for the mystery at hand, but also the tone of what the show was going to be. And again, that bleakness shines through, and it never really lets up. And again, the show, filmed in British Columbia, highlights the Yosemite setting. The sights and sounds that we're able to see and feel are elevating what some could consider a somewhat predictable plot. I mean, it inevitably gets predictable. I wouldn't say that at the beginning, but it really does give this a visceral sense that could elevate something that some would feel a little too meticulous, like, okay, it's moving slowly, and this isn't necessarily a happy show with happy characters. I mean, like I said, the deaths are absolutely gruesome, and every time one washes up, both physically, metaphorically, we get to get right back into that state of dismay. But there are some nice indigenous elements here that I really appreciated. The idea of trauma and how that weaves all of these desolate concepts together. I'm just a big Eric Bana fan, and so from the trailer, I was intrigued by this. And there is a small feeling of disappointment because I expected to see more from this, but ultimately I don't think it's a bad show. It's very well made and easily utilizes that environment that wasn't entirely that environment. And so I need to know your thoughts on this show. Have you binged it already? Are you watching Untamed on Netflix? How did you feel about this vehicle for Eric Bana and his charming smile that we don't see a lot of in this show? Untamed substitutes the necessary urgency with a plethora of side stories and ultimately could have derailed this series. Thankfully, the focal point performances are able to guide us through some of these misplaced moments. The vastness of this setting adds a unique element to the story, and it maintains its bleak tone until the very end. So yet another 6-episode show on Netflix that is available for you all to binge right now. What's the best Netflix show of the year and the best potential binge of 2025 so far? I'd love to know those two down below. And is there another Netflix show or movie that I should be reviewing? Thanks so much.